Hello, Eurovision fans. So it is all over. We can now discuss the winner and the losers of the 2019 Eurovision Song Contest grand finale in Tel Aviv, Israel. I got a lot to say, but I'm going to also try and be a little bit more concise because I also don't have a ton of time to just rant for 50 minutes, which I could easily do about these results. I have them in front of me here. I guess I will just begin by saying that this was a very strong year for a lot of reasons. I think that the songs we had to pick from were pretty good in quality, pretty original, pretty daring, risk taking. We had some amazing vocalists. Honestly, no, I'm not used to seeing such a great crop of performers. This was a very strong year for so many reasons, and the staging was just elevated by so many performances. We had some real boundary pushing staging, some really great moments on stage, and I'm really proud of everyone who participated. I mean, honestly, even the worst songs are still not completely unlistenable, which is usually very common for Eurovision contests. I will link in the description my ranking of the 41 songs because I've split it into three parts and I talk about the bottom 13, the middle 15, and the top 13 songs. So if you're curious about my thoughts on all that, I'll link that in the description, as well as my thoughts on semifinal 1 and semifinal 2 after, the fact when I gave my recap and thoughts on the scoring and the qualifiers and all of that. Now, I'm not going to go through too much talking about each performance. As you know, we all saw these performances for the most part a second time because these were all the qualified countries, the 26 countries, although it was really 20 countries that we'd seen before through the semifinals, and then 5 countries that were the big 5, the UK, Italy, Spain, France, and Germany, plus the host country, Israel, all performed for the first time live in Eurovision for the public to cap out the 26 acts. And here we go with the scoring. So in first place, the winner, if you haven't heard already, spoiler, Duncan Lawrence of the Netherlands. He won the contest overall with 492 points. Now that's combining both the televotes and the juries. For people who are unfamiliar with how the voting works, to be completely honest, I still can't completely tell you how it works either. But they go through what's considered a jury of 41 panelists, one representing each country, who place points and allot them into different categories. And for some reason, they give 1 point to one country, 2 points to another, 3, up to 10, but then they skip 11 for some reason, and then they give 12 points to a certain country that they think is the strongest out of the bunch, and it's called 12 points. It's because there's a lot of French ties to the history of Eurovision, and that's what you really want from the juries. The Netherlands got that quite a bit, but if you were to look at the jury votes solely without factoring in the televotes, which they had released first, they tell a very different story about who was actually winning with the juries. And believe it or not, the Netherlands did not come in first place with the juries, which I gotta be honest with you, I'm very surprised by. The televotes definitely were what pushed it over the edge and put them to first place. But also is important to note is that the Netherlands also did not get the highest televote score. They had a televote score of 261 and a jury score of 231. They're both very high scores, which is why why it won. But if we want to look at the country that had the most jury votes, that goes to Sweden with 239, only 2 points ahead of the person who came in second place with the jury, which was the huge black sheep of this competition in terms of no one really expected it to do this well. North Macedonia, Tamara Tedesco with her song Proud. She swept the juries. I was so excited every time 12 points were given to North Macedonia, very unexpectedly by a lot of different countries. I was just like, oh my god, North Macedonia could win this thing. Like, none of the bookies predicted that. The North Macedonia wasn't even the top 10 for most of people's predictions of the Eurovision Song Contest. And ultimately, North Macedonia came in 8th place overall because, unfortunately, the televote, the general public who were voting, did not necessarily find North Macedonia compelling enough. It only got a score of 58, which is not that great when you compare it to some of the other big entries. It got the lowest televote score out of any of them in the top 10. So you can just tell how much the juries were propping up North Macedonia. And look, I have heard it said a lot that the televote is sort of the more kind of correct placement for these songs, that the juries often just don't get this kind of thing right. I don't know what kind of thing they're smoking, but the jury vote is so much more close to what I think, in most cases, is actually a decent representation of who should have won. That being said, if it were purely up to the juries, Sweden would have won by only 2 points over North Macedonia, which would have been a little bit frustrating. Actually, more than just a little bit frustrating. And Sweden came in 6th place overall because Sweden only got a televote score of 93. Now, the way they announced the points this year was extremely savage. It was very interesting how they changed the running orders by announcing the points in the way they did. And it's very complicated, and I won't get into all of it, but basically it came down to Sweden and the Netherlands and who was going to get, the most points from the televote and who was going to win. Ultimately, they announced that Sweden would need to make at least 253 points from the televote to usurp the Netherlands, because the Netherlands was just so high up because like they had gotten such a great televote score and such a great jury score. And Sweden got an amazing jury score, which in my opinion is a little bit undeserved. I don't think they deserved such a high jury score. They definitely deserve to be in the top 10, but maybe even the top 5, but not in the top 3, and especially not number 1. But Sweden only got 93 points from the public. I must admit, I was pretty shocked, and it was pretty savage the way they announced that. I mean, if you look at Jan Lundvik's face and the reaction, that was a bit of a big disappointment. Like, just hearing that you didn't even make half of what you needed to make to qualify when you were hyped so much. Like, that was a real gutter. And I actually felt pretty bad for him. To only get 93 points, which, isn't terrible. There were a lot of acts that got less than that, but it puts you really only in the middle of the pack. Maybe a little bit in the upper middle. It doesn't put you in the top, categories here, which just goes to show that the general public was not that impressed with Sweden's song. And that's the only instance where the televote really saved the situation for me. Because they put Sweden more in its place. I really didn't want Sweden to win this year. I think their song is very predictable. It's very safe. It's very generic. It's a knockoff of Austria's last year, which came in 3rd place, which was much stronger. I'm not saying that Jan's a bad singer, that he doesn't have great charisma, but I also think the staging was pretty generic. There's another act that's going to be compared to Sweden a lot because they are actually, and I need to correct myself, I've been getting this wrong. I thought that Michael Rice had written Jan Lundvik's song, but it's actually the other way around. Jan Lundvik was the one who wrote Michael Rice's song. Michael Rice has a much stronger performance and a better song, in my opinion, but we'll get to where the UK placed. Oh yeah, we'll get to talking about that. Let's talk about Italy, because Italy ended up coming in 2nd place. Italy got 465 points, not too far behind the Netherlands. I was very impressed for Italy. Italy deserved to be in the top 3. I was very, if you looked at my rankings, I had Italy in, maybe I had it in like 4th or 5th, but I still love the song. It deserved, in terms of my predictions, it deserved to be high up there. They got a decent scoring with the juries too, which really impressed me. I was really worried that the juries weren't going to be so down with the hip hop. 3rd place went to Russia. I was so happy to see, because at the very beginning when the jury scores were being handed out, I was very worried about Russia's placing. This is where the televote, again, did help quite a lot. The televote really was what pushed Russia over the edge. They got a televote of 244 points, which is pretty incredible, but they only got a jury score of 125. So I don't know, again, what performance the juries were watching, but they need to clean their ears and they need to check their eyes, because that was a winning performance. They deserved way more than 125 points. And honestly, as you all know, I would have loved to have seen Russia win the whole thing. I love Duncan. I have no complaints about him winning. And I love Italy. I have no complaints about Italy even coming in 2nd place. I am just so glad Russia at least made in the top 3. That was a killer performance, amazing staging, amazing vocals, an amazing song, like I said, that just is so Eurovision and so, I don't know, it just is so theatrically beautiful and unique in a lot of ways, but also it's still keeping in a theme that's traditional. It's a perfect sort of blend of everything that I think Eurovision could kind of be if it was an amalgamation of stuff. of music. But, you know, again, Sergey has also, you know, he has the good looks, he has the appeal. He is hugely popular in Eastern Europe in particular. So I'm not surprised he got a really high televote score. I'm not surprised the public came out in droves for him. And in this case, I'm really glad they did. Thank you, public. The juries, although I do think in certain cases, like with North Macedonia, they definitely got it really right and the televote got it wrong. In these cases, it definitely was up to the televote to really push these countries over the edge. In fourth place, we had Switzerland. Now, I'm not surprised that it finished top 5. Again, we all kind of knew that this song was going to do pretty well. 212 from the televote, 148 from the jury. I don't like that the jury gave it more points than Russia. That just doesn't really make much sense to me. Not by a lot, but it did. Yeah, okay, the staging was pretty tight. The choreography was pretty good. But come on, the vocals, the whatever. But what was probably the hugest flummox about the televote that really no one predicted, and I certainly did not, besides North Macedonia, if North Macedonia did uncannily well with the juries, this country that came in 5th place, Norway, did uncharacteristically well with the public vote. In fact, so well that it actually won the public vote with a whopping score of 291 points from the televote. Thankfully, the juries were a lot more realistic and they only gave it 47 points. 47 compared to 291. Like, that is a huge mismatch. So clearly, people were not paying attention to the hype of Norway, which I had no idea it was going to do so well with the public. Look, I had Norway in my middle 15 bunch. I think I had it in the top 20, but otherwise I was like, look, this song is nothing that special. It's better than Finland's, which is very EDM as well, because it's got a little bit more of an interesting message, and definitely the yoiker saves the song in a lot of respects. I do like the tie to traditional Sami culture. Seeing that representation on stage is great. But God, did this song deserve top 5? And did it deserve the top score in the televote? Hell no. I don't know what people were thinking. This song is very generic. And has anyone seen Spirit Animal by Curly? Any Curly fans out there? Estonia's 2nd place runner-up from 2017, and Esti Laul, an amazing artist from that country. Well, she had a song called Spirit Animal, and let me just tell you, the visuals, the sonics, the lyrics, everything about Norway's entry is a derivative knockoff of Spirit Animal by Curly. And I'm not even madly in love with that song, but I would take Spirit Animal a million years over this Spirit in the Sky. Again, I don't hate the song. I just, top 5? What on earth are we, what's going on? What are the, and you know, I don't know, from Norway? Like, really? 291 points from the public? The voting was just completely out of control. It came above Sweden in terms of, like I said, the televote, which was just 93. And Sweden came in 6th place. Azerbaijan came in 7th place. They got a pretty even, actually, score. It was 100 points from the televote and 197 points from the jury. I'm not surprised the jury voted it higher than the public. It's a smaller country and people aren't quite as familiar with the artist, probably, but I thought his good looks might help put him a little bit over the edge there. I'd say that's fair. I like 7th place for Azerbaijan for sure. North Macedonia, again in 8th. I would have put North Macedonia in 4th or 5th place. I would have, you know, given them a lot more points from the public. 58 points from the public. Like, come on. People just really need to evaluate their taste. Like, I'm sorry. You think Spirit in the Sky is better than North Macedonia's Proud? This is a problem to me. Okay, and let's round out the top 10. At number 9, we had Australia. Again, a fairly even score, 131 from the televote and 154 from the juries. Again, I'm not surprised the juries were a little bit higher. I knew the jury score had to be at least 100 because that performance was just incredible. I mean, the staging was like unlike nothing Eurovision has ever seen before. I mean, you've got to watch that performance. The song itself is definitely not top 5. I could see it being the top 10 because she has an amazing vocal. But the song itself is very weird to me, and it's not something I really want to listen to any more of. But it's a song that when you watch the whole performance, you can tolerate because the performance is just amazing. Not to mention what the backup people are doing on the pogo stick things, which is what I'm calling them. The twirls and the elegance of it is just so well choreographed. And then I think one of the biggest shockers also for me was that Iceland cracked the top 10. which it has not done in eons, if ever. Iceland never does this well. Hatrith Munsigra got a great score from the televotes of 186 points. So people were really supporting Iceland, and I'm really happy to see they got nearly 200 points from the public. Now, the juries, I must admit, were 48 points. Like, it did probably the worst in terms of Norway did get 1 point less in the jury. So if you look at the top 10, the juries definitely had Norway at 10th place and then Iceland just above it, which I agree more with. I think Iceland was much stronger than Norway's, and Iceland deserved to be ahead of Norway. But be that as it may, Norway does not deserve to be in the top 10. Norway deserves to be in the top 20, but not the top 10. So be that as it may, Iceland made it into the top 10 with a total score of 234 points. People really resonated with something that is very different, and I like seeing that. But they beat out the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic was the 11th place one, and they really, really bombed with the televote with only getting 7 points, which I must admit was pretty kind of nice to see because I thought that song was horribly overrated. I don't know what the jury was thinking giving it 150 points. When I saw they were getting a lot of 12 points from certain countries, I was like, really? The Czech Republic? Like, there were some countries I was like scratching my head. I was like, you gave your 12 points to that? So yeah, no, a lot of unnecessary love from the juries for that song. It's not terrible. Like I said, it deserves to be in the top 15 for sure. I actually thought it was still going to be in the top 10, but I thought it would be 10th place. But it didn't even make it to the top 10 because it got such an abysmal televote score. Not the worst televote score, though. There were 2 countries that got slightly worse. And then Denmark is number 12. 59 televote, 69 jury. Not very surprising. I'm glad the juries did give it a little bit more love, but I'm not surprised it did what it did. I'm actually surprised it did as well as it did. There was one time Italy did give 12 points to Denmark, and some people were really shocked at that, but I heard one blogger say, it's actually pretty smart. Italy's trying to win, so they gave their 12 points away to someone who was definitely not competition. They were like, look, who can we give 12 points to that's not going to get any more 12 points from anyone else so that we can just get that out of the way? And giving that to Denmark was pretty smart. Slovenia, my personal favorite, came in 13th place with a televote score of 59 and a jury score of 46. Not the best. I would have liked to have seen people vote a little bit more for it, and I would have particularly liked to have seen the juries favor it a lot higher. I would love to have seen it get at least 100 points from the juries. But hey, it made it in the top 15. I was really worried it wasn't, to be honest. I was partly kind of expecting it to be in the bottom 5. So I'm very happy to see Slovenia did so well. I would have not expected that at the beginning of this competition. You all know that's my personal favorite song of this year, right? It's the one I've listened to the most. We're completing out, that was the first half of the league scoreboard, the top 13, which is displayed on the left side. They're the ones who sort of did pretty well. And then we have the right side of the scoreboard, and a lot of the songs that appeared on the right side, I am very happy did so. I'm glad that France didn't make it quite as high as I think a lot of people were thinking. A lot of people were thinking top 10, even possibly top 5 for France. I think they needed to check themselves. That song was definitely not quite top 10 material, especially top 5 material. The choreography was cool. I like the, body positivity, this message behind it, the costuming. Bilal's not a bad vocalist, and he's certainly improved over time with his performances when you consider his Destination Eurovision performance back in February. But it was still not a song that really, I think, had the momentum behind it to win. I'm not surprised, and I think some people are shocked that it did so badly, but, it deserved to be on the right side of the scoreboard. Cyprus underperformed. I think after the semifinals, people realized it was definitely going to qualify, but I think the hype around Cyprus definitely died down. Malta doing so poorly was a bit unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen Malta in the top 10. I would have had Malta replacing, Sweden or Switzerland any day in my top 10. Malta definitely, maybe not top 5, but Malta deserved 6th place or something. But they only got 20 votes from the televote. But it is a very small country. But it's such a radio-friendly song. I was very surprised that young people in particular didn't resonate so much with Malta. But it did do, 75 points from the juries, which, again, is still low, but okay. Serbia, I'm not surprised where it finished. Albania, Estonia made it to 19. This is where I have a lot of issues. Estonia got a pretty even score. They got 48 points from the televote, 38 points from the jury. Again, I'm not necessarily too unhappy with those results, and I'm not too surprised. It's just the fact that there were countries below Estonia that got worse results that deserved to be way higher than it. The fact that there are countries below Estonia, two in particular, that scored lower than it, really pissed me off. San Marino did score lower than Estonia, but again, it's a similar issue. San Marino came in 20th, but they got this crazy televote score of 65 points, but the juries only gave it 16, which is much more deserved. Again, prank voting. There's always that novelty act. I'm learning this more. People want to see some crazy old person do something really off-key and kooky and fun because, you know, I get it. It's entertaining. But San Marino, again, at least it made it into the bottom 6, but it deserved to be at the very, very bottom. Like, let's be real. Greece got below Estonia. Like, let's just let that sink in for a second.
And you know what? That's not okay. That behavior's not okay. How dare you?
Greece came in 21st place, and it came below San Marino and Estonia. I'm sorry. Like, where was the love for Katerine? A 24 from the televote? I mean, the juries gave it higher, a 47, but both were underperforming. Like, the juries and the televote, like, what was going on? That was an amazingly staged performance with an amazing song and a killer vocal. I was very disappointed with Greece's results, and there is some tomfoolery going around. I don't know if there's possibly some political reasonings for why Greece did so poorly. I think the only country that gave it 12 points was Cyprus. And because Cyprus and Greece have like such a close relationship. So thank you, Cyprus, for at least acknowledging Greece deserving the 12 points, but it only received 1 douze points. Like, it deserved to be in the top 10. Like, what's at least the top 15, but it came below Estonia. If I talk about this anymore, my blood pressure is going to go through the roof. But unfortunately, there's more tomfoolery coming up. We round out the bottom 5 with Spain. No one's surprised Spain did as badly as it did. I mean, it got a whopping 7 from the juries. Israel got a 12 from the juries and a 35 from the televote. Israel deserved a little bit better. I would definitely like to have seen Israel above Estonia. I don't get why Estonia did better than Israel. Israel had an amazing vocalist, an amazing performance. It had home country advantage, but I guess people just really found it very dated and very Broadway and just were like not finding any sort of connection with it. Germany came in 24th place with 32 points from the juries, which was way too high in my opinion, and 0 from the public vote. Now, I must admit, that did feel pretty good to me, hearing that. When they said, I'm sorry, you get 0 points, 0 points for Germany. But I gotta be honest, that's also very harsh, because at the end of the day, these are artists, and hearing you get 0 points is pretty hard to hear. I don't know if this is the first time that Germany has gotten 0 points, but look, the song was very bad. It definitely did not deserve, to do anything above 24th place, for sure. I'm not unhappy with that at all. But yeah, I don't know why the juries were so in love with it. I guess the feminist message undertone of it was still something they were sort of resonating with. But the song, I mean, the outfits, they looked like they were ready to go to the shopping mall. Their outfits were not speaking to each other whatsoever. No coordination. They should have kept the spinning platform because the staging was just nothing. It was just them on a stage. It was like a karaoke session. Very, I don't know, nothing better to say. Belarus coming in 25th place, I'm okay with. They definitely didn't get much love by the juries or the televote. And then the United Kingdom came in 26th place with a jury score of 13, but a televote score of 3. They had the second worst televote score if you rank by televote. Germany did come behind them, which I'm definitely okay with. The UK was definitely better than Germany. Like, can we at least acknowledge that? But seriously, the UK was better than the like 10 acts that it's ranked below. The UK deserved to be in the top 15. And in my opinion, personally, it deserved to be in the top 13. I am deeply offended by this. What does the UK have to do to get above this political voting, which is obviously all about the fact that UK does not want to be a part of Europe anymore, the European Union? Look, I've heard a lot of people online say that it's nothing to do with Brexit because the UK has been struggling since the early 2000s to even do beyond top, beyond place number 20. Look, I'll admit that Brexit is not the first reason it's not doing well. The UK has not been putting much effort, the BBC in particular, into creating original music. It's very kind of X Factor, it's very dated, it's very like traditional, it's very risk-free. They do need to work on sending better acts, but they have been improving in recent years. Albeit, yeah, okay, it wasn't a risk, I'll give it that. And okay, I will admit, I was pretty let down by the staging. Michael Rice deserved much better staging. The only thing that sort of redeemed it was at the end when they formed that circle with the gospel vocalists and they were all kind of throwing their vocal back at each other. I liked that because I could feel the energy there. But before that, it was just a very sort of like, let's get a guy on a mic and just have him sting on stage with some cosmic flashing going on in the background. Yeah, the staging was nothing special. But the vocal, he didn't hit a single bum note, okay? And if you look at San Marino's performance or Estonia's performance or, Spain or Israel or Germany or Belarus, why the heck did they come above the United Kingdom? There's only one answer. Like, political voting. I don't know what else to be said. I mean, they absolutely hate them. You would expect Ireland to possibly give them like at least 10 points with the juries, but they didn't. I forget what they gave the UK, if any. Like, look, I don't know what to say. Like, people were saying it's a trash song and it was really bad. And I'm like, what are you listening to? What is your music taste? Bigger Than Us has an amazing hook, an amazing chorus, an amazing vocalist behind it. And you know what? This is a singing competition, okay? Vocals do matter. I know it's not the only thing, so it's not necessarily like American Idol in that regard, but vocals do matter, okay? And that should count for something. The reason why a lot of those other countries came so far below it is because the same so low is because they had pretty bad vocals. Although Greece, again, what the heck? Why is Greece so low? I honestly, the Greece and the UK's placings are what really piss me off. And ultimately, what really pisses me off is the fact that if Sweden sang Bigger Than Us, if you got Jan Lundvik to sing the exact same song, they could have still won the entire competition. I ended up having to clap back at so many people saying that the Bigger Than Us was a trash song when I was like, what do you think of Too Late for Love? Like, seriously, what do you think of that song? Do you think that it's any better? Seriously. Look at what almost won and what came in last place. That is the obvious evidence you need that this is purely political. It's not like that every year, and it's not always like that where all the countries land. I get that. There are other factors other than, the current state of Brexit right now and all these things. The UK has this like masochistic thing where they really don't like supporting themselves. It's kind of like it's cool to hate your own entry from the UK. So the BBC in the UK really doesn't try any effort. I don't think the BBC wants the UK to host. But you have to consider when these people are giving the votes, especially the juries, but also the televotes, none of them want the contest to be held in the UK. None of them want it to be in London or Manchester, especially right now. Like, that would just be the biggest middle finger to Europe, and it is purely political. So the country that wins is probably going to be within the EU. Let's just be real. It's the same thing. It's the same reason why Russia is never going to win. Russia is never going to win Eurovision because of political voting. Okay? Like, let's just make that very clear. Sergei came in third place last time. He's gotten the highest scores ever for Russia. I'm proud of him. He really carries them very close. And the reason why they do so well is because they have a really strong public vote that comes out in Eastern Europe and supports them. But the juries are never, ever, ever going to give Russia what it deserves. And it's the exact same situation with the UK. And other countries too. It's not just those countries, but political voting exists in Eurovision, which is hugely hypocritical because now let's get into the even juicier side of Eurovision. let's talk about politics and let's talk about performances. There were some controversial moments, nonetheless, from the queen of controversy herself in pop. I know a lot of people want to hear me talk about Madonna and her interval performance. I must admit, I expected it to be in the halftime portion, like right before Israel's performance, but they pushed it to almost at the very end. So it was like, where's Madonna? Where's Madonna? I am not surprised that Madonna had the Israeli and Palestinian flags on the backs of her dancers walking up those steps at the end of her performance holding hands. I think that was the classiest and best way for her to make the statement that she needed to make on that stage. You knew she was going to do it, Eurovision. You're angry about it, but you knew her track record, you knew her imagery and her performance aesthetic. How could you not have expected this? Of course it was unplanned. Of course she was going to do at the at least very minimum to make that statement. She wanted to perform in Tel Aviv specifically for that reason. I am so certain of it. It was very, very important for her to do that. I also think she wanted to, try out doing it for Eurovision because it's a huge venue and a huge audience. I get it, but she was putting that spotlight on where it needed to be shown. Now, her performance, this is where it gets tricky for me. I love Madonna. I cover her on this channel. I'm so excited to review her upcoming album, Madam X, which comes out next month. I know I haven't been reviewing. She's released a slew of singles in anticipation of this record. I have reviewed the lead single, Medellin, featuring Maluma. I can link that in the description if anyone's interested. I reviewed several of her albums, ranked her best songs. Madonna is, at the beginning and forefront, a performance artist. If you've seen videos of her tours, I mean, the spectacle that she puts on is unlike any other pop artist. I mean, she goes all out with the theming, with the costuming, with the pyrotechnics, with the animatronics, with the engineering of the stage, the interludes, the creativity. I mean, she does the whole thing. But the one thing she's always struggled with, particularly in the last decade, is the live vocal. Madonna is not really remembered as a true vocalist. Okay, it's just the truth. It's not shade. She would admit it herself, and she has admitted it. If you want a vocal performance, look to Celine Dion. Okay, look to I mean, I'm not a huge Beyonce fan, but I mean Beyonce. Look to Beyonce. Look to even Lady Gaga. Those artists, though they also are performers. Well, Celine Dion isn't so much of a performer. She is a vocal talent. Same with artists like Adele. Beyonce and Lady Gaga try and balance both. And they bring the performance, but they also bring the vocals. Madonna is more about the performance. And although I don't think she's the worst vocalist we have in pop music by any means, we got a lot worse ones out there. Madonna didn't have a great night. Now, if you look on YouTube and watch this performance, you might think, oh, Like a Prayer actually sounds pretty on key. It doesn't sound off. That's because it was edited. I realized it took a little while for the performance to be uploaded online, and I was like, are they going back and doing some post-production on that? Yeah. I watched it live, and I can tell you, she opened up with Like a Prayer. It was very similar to her Met Gala performance that she did a year ago, where she had the Gregorian monks chanting Madonna very ominously. Talk about vocals. They had some amazing harmonizations. I love me some great Gregorian monk chanting. I love that very Catholic, dark, kind of ritualistic music. I'm not a hugely Catholic or religious person, but I love church music, and I think it's so spiritual and magical, and I love that she plays with that. The staging, it was so dark and moody. She gave a rendition of Like a Prayer that was very stripped down and very, in a way, kind of monotone, and it was not upbeat in any sort of way, which I think some people were very let down by. When she performed at the Super Bowl 7 years ago, she did perform Like a Prayer, but it was more of the traditional uplifting gospel song performance, which had people on their feet clapping along. She performed Like a Prayer 7 years ago at the Super Bowl. That was the one part of the performance that was not playback, that she did sing live, and she was completely on key. She gave an amazing performance. I still think that's one of the best performances of all time. Her Super Bowl performance, I know there was a lot of playback, is one of the best Super Bowl performances. Don't, I mean, Lady Gaga's was great too. I mean, I have a really hard time discerning which was best, and Beyonce's as well, and Michael Jackson's. But beyond, I mean, Madonna really, she put on a show at the Super Bowl. But unfortunately for Eurovision, it missed the mark. And this is no hate to Madonna. Like I said, I think she put on an amazing spectacle. I think she put on an amazing show. But at the end of the day, like rehearsal and being on key, like it would almost have been better if you just used playback because that was kind of really painful to hear. I honestly, I felt so awkward listening to that performance. And I just thought about all the people who already kind of hate on Madonna for like ageist, crap. There's all the ageism that's thrown at there. This did not to quench those fires. I mean, you've got Piers Morgan, you've got all of these quacks who are telling her to retire, telling her she's a complete has-been, washed up, crazy lady. And unfortunately, this performance just did nothing to sort of prove them wrong. Then we had a transition which was very much staged. It was very theatrical, and I believe it was from a song on her album we have yet to hear called Dark Ballet. It was more of like an interlude. Must admit, very intriguing what she was saying. Very poignant. You could tell that she was definitely speaking directly to the Israeli government, but it was in the most subtle of ways. I was like, dang, she's going there. Like, are they going to shut off the feed at any moment? Because looking at the imagery and what she was saying, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if Israeli media was like, cut the cord. This isn't good. This isn't good. And then she went to her new song Future, featuring American rapper Quavo of the trio Migos. You know probably how I feel about her collaborating with these rappers, these hot one day, gone the next, young chart-topping rappers that she seems to want to collaborate with on every new album. Quavo was very cringy when he was interviewed by one of the presenters. I mean, he even said that his favorite Madonna song was a song off of his record that featured her. I mean, how cocky and ignorant you have to be to not even name or know to name one Madonna song. One Madonna song. Not to mention he shaded her by basically saying, yeah, my mom loves to listen to her. Okay, like, why, Madonna, are you working with this fool? He is so slandering you. Like, oh my god. Like, seriously, it was so cringy. Now, obviously, he was auto-tuned as anything, but no one is surprised at that. So it's like, whatever. But Madonna's auto-tune on that song, now, I've heard the studio version. It's also very auto-tuned, and I think it was done so on purpose. I get it. She's trying to play with reggaeton. She's trying to be a little bit like a hip-hop artist in that song, and look, it's okay, like, for her to do that on certain songs, but as a song that she performed live in front of 200 million people, there are better songs off of this record she probably could have chosen. Like, why couldn't she have just performed Medellin again? She did an amazing job performing that at the billboards, and that song isn't nearly as auto-tuned. It may be a little bit, but it's not nearly as egregiously done so. The auto-tune is, like, over the top on her vocals on this song, Future. The song is all right. I mean, it's got an interesting, poignant message, which, I mean, in her case is kind of morbid when you think about all the greats of her decade, of her generation, who have not made it as far as she has in terms of being alive. But I just think it was a poor choice for Eurovision. I think Like a Prayer mashed up with Dark Ballet into Medellin would have been a better choice. Or another song. I'm sure she has better songs on the album. So it's sort of like the similar problem. I mean, she performed Give Me All Your Loving at the Super Bowl, and that song was pretty bad, but it featured big artists, so she had to perform it, and it was promoting the album. So it was a similar thing, but the problem is that this performance, unlike the Super Bowl, didn't have a lot of other songs to sort of cushion it out. So we didn't get quite as much to deflate from the cringiness. It's a real shame because I want to show my parents this song, but they don't always think the highest of Madonna, and I don't think this performance is going to make them think any higher of her. It had interesting choreography, interesting costuming, interesting theatrics. I loved the message at the end, and it was censored, but too late by Israeli media, if you caught that. They were a little too late to hit the censor button with the flags. With the wake-up message at the end, she is always going to be pushing those buttons. Let me just say that Madonna was not the only artist to push buttons this time. Iceland, when they received their 12 points, which they only received once, which, maybe they deserved a few more times. I forget which country gave it to them. were very controversial in that when they received it, they held up banners saying Palestine. The Eurovision Song Contest, which is so hypocritical because, like I said, the voting by the juries and the televote is so political, so political. And for the televote, they kind of can't help it, but for the juries, they really should not be like, they should be like, no political voting. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay, try again. Look at the UK score. Um, but but the Eurovision Song Contest is not too happy with Iceland for doing that. They are in actually big trouble. Apparently, they're reviewing possible repercussions and sanctions against the Icelandic broadcaster that brings, the Icelandic act to Eurovision each year. And I gotta be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the sanctions includes a year of disqualification for Eurovision in 2020, which would be really sad. I'm sure Hatari would be annoyed, but they would also be like, look, we did what we had to do. We knew that we had to come and make a statement being on the stage. And I'm glad that they went and they protested because Israel is an apartheid state. I'm sorry if that offends you. I don't absolutely hate Israel. I'm not like completely anti Israel. I really want the two Israel and Palestine to live in harmony together. I'm a pacifist. I'm always going to want that. But the occupations, the treatment on both sides, Palestine hasn't been necessarily the most peaceful either. So like, look, it goes both ways. The conflict is so like, millennia old, and it needs to be sorted out. Like it needs to be done with. We can bring this into the 21st century, but we are. And it's really unfortunate that the situation is what it is. It was always going to be controversial hosting this year in Tel Aviv. I'm actually surprised that there wasn't nearly as much controversy as there was. I did see some things about there were some protesters in Tel Aviv the night of the Eurovision contest. I also heard something that one of the Israeli broadcasters was hijacked by Hamas for like 10 minutes during one of the semifinals. I haven't researched that anymore, but my dad was telling me that. So if anyone could clarify on that, because I didn't see anything about that or hear anything about that on social media or anything. Did that really happen? Because that's actually terrifying. Apparently, according to him, he heard that one broadcaster was hijacked for 10 minutes and trying to cause mass hysteria by basically like doing a bomb threat sort of thing, which is extremely dangerous and extremely scary when you consider just how many people were in Tel Aviv for this event. And, the violence isn't really in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is sort of like the very sort of pink washed Western, safe space of Israel. I hate saying that, but it's the safe place of Israel, which by the way, the people who kept coming at me for saying Israel was going to host in Jerusalem, not Tel Aviv, how on earth were they going to do that? Like, seriously, that would have been so controversial. So controversial. I never expected for a second that it was going to be held in Jerusalem. Anyway, I'm worried in the comments I might be stepping into a firestorm here. But look, Eurovision was stepping into it to begin with. But, I'm proud of Madonna for making that statement. I'm really proud of Iceland for making that statement. The voting was closed. They'd already done their performance. It's not like they did it on stage during their performance. I think that would have definitely disqualified them. But, I don't know. I'm really worried that Iceland may suffer in the future. They're not the first country to do that. I think Armenia got in trouble a few years ago for waving a flag during a Douze Point recital. And it was for a really contested region of the country that is trying to break away and be independent. But they ultimately were just given a warning and they were able to participate the following year. So hopefully Iceland will be participating in 2020. Amsterdam 2020, Utrecht 2020, The Hague, where's it going to be held? The Netherlands are going to hold it. Next year, we will be back. Gosh, I must admit, a part of me almost wants to travel. It's much closer to me. I mean, it's still across the ocean, but it's a lot easier to get to. So I am very excited. I'm very happy for Duncan, a very deserved win. It's not my favorite song, but the message and the meaning behind it and him himself, he's such a humble, wonderful guy. He deserves the world, not a bit of ego in him. Like, he is just such a sweet, humble character. He deserves this. I'm so glad Sweden didn't win. They really need an ego check. They're not as great as they think they are. The UK, on the other hand, could really use, it's just so crummy what has been done to the UK with the voting. Yeah, they could send better songs, but come on, they're not that bad. And also Greece. I'm so sorry, Katarine. You deserved so much better. I don't know what the heck was going on with people not receiving that song. And then congratulations for Tamara with North Macedonia for coming second place with the juries. Very well deserved. I'm so sorry the public didn't get it, but the public are swine, so the music professionals know what they're talking about, except for giving Sweden top points. But whatever. That's all I have to say. What did you think of the finale? Are you happy with Duncan's win? What did you think of Madonna's performance? What did you think of the results? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear all your thoughts. Again, it was a very interesting year for sure, and I'm very glad I tuned in for it, because other years I haven't paid as much attention. So thank you all so much for watching and clicking. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day, and we'll see you all in Eurovision 2020 in the Netherlands. Peace, love, and light.